on, Gary!
I would not be standing here before you tonight if I didn't think I could do a really good job as President of the United States. And I base that on my resume. I have been an entrepreneur my entire life. Since I've been 17 years old, I've paid for everything that I've had in my life. When I was a junior in college, 1974, I actually started a one-man handyman business in Albuquerque and grew that business to employ over 1,000 people. Electrical, mechanical, plumbing, pipe fitting, architects, engineers. It's amazing what can happen if you show up on time and do what you say you'll do for people. And that was really the basis for the success. I've got a bit of advice for all of you, and it's worth exactly what you're paying for it, which is nothing. But that is, whatever your expertise, whatever it is you like doing, apply it entrepreneurially. Apply it entrepreneurially. Go into business for yourself. Become your own boss. And the rewards you will find will be 100-fold that of doing or working for somebody else. I'm also an athlete. I've been an athlete my entire life, and what athletics has taught me is that life is a journey, it's not a destination. If you make life a destination, you're just bound to be disappointed, so enjoy what it is you do. It was mentioned that I climbed Mount Everest. I actually got to summit Mount Everest, and I want you all to know I did not conquer Mount Everest. Nobody conquers Mount Everest. I got really lucky. She lifted her skirt, she gave us a peek, and life was good. But back to life as a journey. You know, I get to go over to Nepal. I was fit enough to do that, and it just turned out. It was really fortunate. 2 months prior to my going to Nepal to climb Mount Everest, I broke my leg. A full fracture of the tibia. That's another thing that we all come in contact with, which is nothing we do goes according to plan. Nothing. Count on that as being part of the plan. When I broke my leg, when I had a full fracture of the tibia, you know, that would have been an easy time to lay back on the couch and think, oh, well, this just wasn't meant to be. Or the notion that, well, this happened, I can still make this happen, and I'm going to move forward, and that's our lives. Things get in the way of everything that we do, and depending on how we deal with adversity is really whether or not we're successful or not. So another one of those pieces of advice that is worth exactly what you're paying for it is imagine your life, and you're watching your life on a movie screen every single day. You're the star, you're the director, you're the producer. Do you like what you see? And if you don't like what you see, there's one person in control of this production, and that's you. And you can change it immediately. So the old adage about make the most out of your life, make the most out of your life, and you're the one that can make the most out of your life. When I ran for governor of New Mexico, I had never been involved in politics before, and I mean never. I went and I introduced myself to the Republican Party 2 weeks before I announced, completely outside of politics. New Mexico's a state that's 2-to-1 Democrat. I went and I introduced myself to John Latuzio, who was the chairman of the Republican Party in New Mexico, and here's what he says. He says, wow, man, I like what you've got to say. I like you. I like what you've done with your life. Republican Party, we're going to be totally inclusive. You can come, you can take part in the traveling show, make your pitch to all Republicans in the state, take part in all the debates, and take part in all the discussions. I mean, make your pitch for why you should be governor. He said, I think it's a good pitch, but you just need to know that you'll never get elected governor. That it's not possible to come from completely outside of politics And even if you win the nomination, there's no way you're going to win the general election because the state is 2-to-1 Democrat. Well, I got elected, and I would like to think it was based on what I had to say, which was just bring a common sense business approach to state government. Best product, best service, lowest price, keep government out of the bedroom, allow me to make decisions that really only I should be making. And I got elected, and I think most significantly, I got re-elected. I got re-elected in a state that was 2-to-1 Democrat, and becoming governor of New Mexico, I think I distinguished myself in many categories, but one of the categories was I may have vetoed more legislation than the other 49 governors in the country combined. I vetoed 750 bills. I had thousands of line item vetoes. Only 2 were overturned, so it made a difference when it came to billions of dollars worth of spending. It made a difference when it came to government telling you or I what we should or shouldn't do in the bedroom. It made a difference when it came to you or I making decisions that I think only you or I should have been able to make. Now, in a state that's 2-to-1 Democrat, I should have been ridden out on a rail, but I did get re-elected by a bigger margin the second time. I just think it speaks volumes to the fact that people really appreciate good stewardship of tax dollars. Now, this legislation that I vetoed all sorts of legislation, and I could cite hundreds and hundreds of different examples, but I remember one piece of legislation which was quadruple fines for speeding in a construction zone. You know what, as a libertarian, and I think you know you're a libertarian when you know that you hate speed limits. I'm using the construction speed limit as an example. You know, they set a speed limit in a construction zone, let's say 50 miles an hour. And we drive through there at 50 miles an hour, and at a certain time in the day, 50 miles an hour is reckless driving. Other times, though, we drive through that same area, nobody's there, it's the middle of the night, and you could be going 100 miles an hour perfectly safe. Well, that's the way government should be, in my opinion, is it should rely on you and I as individuals to make these choices for ourselves. There are other third-party candidates in this election, but I am on the ballot in 48 states. I'm an official write-in candidate in the state of Michigan, and shame on Oklahoma for the rest of their days for being the only state that doesn't have a third party on the ballot. Putting this into perspective, the Green Party, I believe, is on the ballot in 30 states. So putting this into perspective, and there are other third-party candidates, but they're even less than the 30 states. So when I talk about myself and my opponents, I am talking about Barack Obama and Mitt Romney in the context of being on the ballot in all of these states. So when it comes to the issues, I'm the only candidate that doesn't want to bomb Iran. We bomb Iran, we're going to find ourselves with another 100 million enemies to this country that we wouldn't otherwise have. The largest demonstration in the world after 9/11 in support of the United States was in Tehran, Iran, where over 1 million citizens showed up in support of the United States. If we bomb Iran, we're going to find ourselves in a 2-year bombing maintenance program with Iran. And right now we have these economic sanctions against Iran. Well, inflation in Iran right now is running at 75%. It's a horrible situation. Do citizens in Iran hate their government because of the 75% inflation? No. They hate the US because we're the ones that are instigating this. So how about the notion of free trade with other countries? Were we going to bomb Russia when they got a nuke? Were we going to bomb China when they got a nuke? Didn't we engage in trade with these countries? And isn't that pretty removed, really? I'm the only candidate running for president of the United States that wants to get out of Afghanistan tomorrow and bring the troops back. The root of all evil is? The root of all evil is politicians beating their chests and in the name of, I'm going to save you against the terrorist threat, I'm going to save you against the illegal immigrant, I'm going to save you against the drug scourge, I'm going to save you against poor health, elect me or re-elect me. And when it comes to our military engagements, our military involvements, here it is, we've made hundreds of millions of enemies to this country that but for these military interventions would otherwise not exist. And in the name of, I'm going to save you from the terrorist threat, politicians are giving a death sentence to tens of thousands of innocent civilians in these countries where we intervene. And our men and servicewomen are coming back in body bags, or coming back with their limbs blown off. And the cause of all of this are politicians that just simply want to get elected or re-elected. So how about sending a message to any politician that wants to militarily intervene anywhere? And that's, I'm never going to vote for any politician that wants to militarily intervene. I'm the only candidate running for president that believes that marriage equality is a constitutionally guaranteed right. I am the only candidate running for president of the United States that wants to end the drug wars now. Legalize now. And not that you don't all understand this, Colorado has the opportunity to change worldwide drug policy by voting yes for Prop 64. I go around the country telling people, Coloradans get it. 6 years ago, citizens of Denver vote to decriminalize marijuana on a campaign based on marijuana being safer than alcohol. And growing up in New Mexico as your neighbor, I was always struck by the fact that Colorado has more per capita marijuana smokers than any other state in the country. Colorado gets it. And I heard this, I gave a radio interview before I got on here. How's this going to work when it comes to the other states? Colorado being the first domino that falls, Colorado that's going to be the first domino that 49 other states follow and bring about rational drug policy. Well, when everybody in the country wants to get on an airplane come the weekend to go to Denver to chill out, that's how it's going to work. And how many of you have heard this argument, this ridiculous argument about people who are going to move to Colorado just so they can smoke pot? Well, yeah, and how about the millions of entrepreneurs, business people, doctors, scientists, lawyers, inventors that will move to Colorado for the same reason? So how would it work to have a president that's not adverse to vetoing legislation? I would have vetoed the Patriot Act. Homeland Security, incredibly redundant. TSA. leave airport security to the airlines, to the airports, to the states, to the municipalities. And if I'm elected President of the United States and they don't abolish TSA, I guarantee you in a very short amount of time, TSA will be less intrusive and as safe. Because as President of the United States, as Governor of New Mexico, you control all the rules and regulations. I'm the only candidate running for President of the United States that would have vetoed the National Defense Authorization. For you and I, as U.S. citizens, to be arrested and detained without being charged. This is why we fought wars. This is why we fought wars. I am the only candidate that doesn't believe, I hate to say this, Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy. And in that regard, we have to balance the federal budget now. If we don't balance, monetary collapse very simply is when the dollars we have in our pocket don't buy a thing because of the accompanying inflation that goes along with borrowing and printing money to the tune of 43 cents out of every dollar we're spending. So when you talk about balancing the federal budget, you've got to start off by talking about Medicaid and Medicare and military spending. Medicare is a benefit that all of us in our lifetimes pay in $30,000 and we get a $100,000 benefit. By extension, whatever we pay into Medicare, we're getting a benefit 3 times that of what we're paying in. It is absolutely unsustainable, and if anybody believes it's sustainable, then I'm back to Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy. We've got to fix this. It's going to be mutual sacrifice on the part of all of us, but we've got to do this. And here we've got Obama and Romney arguing over who's going to spend more money when we have to be looking at slashing spending and a monetary collapse. Soviet Union experienced a monetary collapse at the end of the 80s. And what happened prior to that? Gee, they were in Afghanistan for 10 years fighting a war that was not to be won, and it bankrupted them, and they suffered as a result of it. And not in our lifetimes are they going to recover from a monetary collapse. I am the only candidate running for President of the United States that is advocating eliminating income tax, eliminate corporate tax, abolish the IRS, and replace all of it with one federal consumption tax. Now, the federal and I am embracing the fair tax. It ends up being cost neutral over a very short amount of time. It's really the answer when it comes to American exports, bleeding out all existing federal non-transparent tax out of goods and services that we would export. It's the answer when it comes to China, and it's the answer when it comes to American jobs. If tens of millions of American jobs are not created with a zero corporate tax rate environment, I don't know what it takes to create tens of millions of jobs. And under the fair tax, no longer would there be withholdings from your payroll check. No more Social Security taken out, no more unemployment, no more Medicare. All of those proceeds would come out of the proceeds of the fair tax. Really reboot the American economy for the next 100 years. Crony capitalism is alive and well in this country. Both parties have their hands out to sell loopholes. Individuals, groups, and corporations buy those loopholes. Enact the fair tax. Half of Washington lobbyists get pink slips because half of Washington lobbyists are there to garner these loopholes. And then talking about crony capitalism. I'm the only candidate running for president that would sign legislation abolishing the Federal Reserve. What an inside game. Treasury prints money, they give it to the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve gives money to the banks at 0%. Do the banks give that money to you or I? No, they buy treasuries in a closed loop, making profits without taking any risk whatsoever, and we are paying for those profits. This is America today, and this doesn't have to be America today. And I'm the only candidate running for President of the United States that would sign legislation repealing legal tender laws and establish competing currencies, which would actually give value to the currency that we have. I ran 2 campaigns for governor of New Mexico where I did not mention my opponent in print, radio, or television. People are hungry to vote for a leader. People don't want to vote for the lesser of two evils. People want to actually vote for somebody that they think can make a difference. So that said, Barack Obama. I have to tell you, everything that Barack Obama says, I agree with. Everything. There's nothing that I disagree with what he has to say. I liken him to playing a violin. And the music that comes out is just that. It's music. It's just that nothing matches up with the words. The reality is about as far removed from the words as it possibly can be. Who would have believed that he would be as militaristic a president as we have ever had? Who would believe that we're funding the Syrian insurgents right now, a quarter of which are jihadists? Didn't we learn anything when it came to Afghanistan? And then all this Libya stuff. Why did we have anyone in these Libyan embassies in the first place? This is an area looking for targets, and we're giving them targets. This is not a show of weakness. This is a show of strength. This is a show of we understand what's going on. Barack Obama, he promised he would not crack down on medical marijuana facilities where legislatures or citizens voted to implement these programs. And he's cracking down on medical marijuana facilities in Colorado and California, and he promised he wouldn't do that. And he promised, when it came to gay rights, I just thought, wow, we're going to really get down the path. But when you start talking about marriage equality and leaving it to the states, 42 states have said marriage is between a man and a woman. When you say leave marriage to the states, effectively saying, I'm not going to do anything about this. Marriage equality is a constitutionally guaranteed right on par with civil rights of the 60s. And then Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, in the second debate, Mitt Romney says it's a no-brainer to build a fence across the border. You're looking at somebody, you're listening to somebody who does not have one molecule of brain based on that statement. Building a fence across the border would be an incredible waste of time and money. We should make it as easy as possible for somebody that wants to come into this country and work to get a work visa. Not a green card, not citizenship, but a work visa. I maintain that immigrants would stand in line if the line was moving to get a work visa. And the reason we have 11 million illegal immigrants here in this country is you can't get a work visa and come into this country and work. And yet everyone who wants to come into this country and work recognizes that if they can get across the border, even illegally, that there'll be a job there waiting for them. And that's the reason why we have 11 million illegal immigrants here in this country right now. And we don't want to be breaking up families. We don't want to be sending people back. Now I'm back to conduct a background check. We don't want criminals in this country, but we don't want to be breaking up families. And if we enact the fair tax, we're going to attract manufacturing jobs to the United States like never before. Foreign investment capital, which has decreased 50% over the last 8 years, would increase by 300% over the next 8 years. And then back to the border. So much of the border, so much of the attitudes of the border has to do with border violence. And border violence is a prohibition phenomenon. 90% of the drug problem is prohibition related, not use related. That's not to discount the problems of use and abuse, but that should be the focus. So we have 40,000 deaths south of the border over the last 4 years. These are disputes that are being played out with guns rather than the courts. Didn't we learn anything when it came to the prohibition of alcohol when disputes were being played out with machine guns as opposed to in the courts? And Mitt Romney says, we need to balance the budget, but we need to hold Medicare intact, and we need to increase spending for the military. I'm looking around here, and I'm believing that everybody here has finished the 2nd grade, and the mathematic equivalency that went along with finishing the 2nd grade, and it just doesn't add up. And he's supposed to be a smart guy. At the end of the debates the other night between Biden and Ryan says, we're going to increase spending by 3%. They're going to increase spending by 4.5%. What's the big deal? There isn't a big deal between either of them. It's status quo. It's putting our heads in the sand and believing that this is going to all fix itself somehow miraculously. It's not, and I think we all recognize that this has to be mutual sacrifice on the part of all of this if we're going to fix these very, very pressing issues that if we don't fix them, we're going to find ourselves without a country. So I get the notion, I get the thing all the time, wasted vote. You know, wasting your vote is voting for somebody that you don't believe in. That's wasting your vote. You vote for the person you believe in. That's how you change things in this country. And I want to make a pitch to all of you. And that pitch is waste your vote. Waste your vote. Vote for Gary Johnson. If everybody does that, I'm the next president of the United States. And my pledge to all of you is that no one will regret that vote. My pledge to all of you is there's no quit in me. There's no quit. What we want to do is we want to elect a leader who's going to get up every single day and doggedly pursue the things that they're talking about. That was the great hope with Obama, but none of it transpired. How about the notion of actually getting up every single day and going after these really difficult issues that nobody really wants to take on? As governor of New Mexico, good government was easy. It wasn't hard. And it started with looking at issues first and politics last. It made a huge difference. 3 things over the last year, I think, that are significant, were significant. One was a poll. You know, they did a poll of all the presidential candidates and the favorabilities of those presidential candidates in his or her own state. Do you know there's only one presidential candidate viewed favorably in his or her own state, and that's me? People wave at me with all 5 fingers, not just one. And then they did a study of all the presidential candidates and their job creation record. Who created the most jobs? Well, that ended up to be me, and my response to that was the same as it was when I was governor of New Mexico. I did not create one single job as governor of New Mexico. The private sector creates jobs, but I controlled all the agencies, I controlled all the boards and commissions, I controlled all the rules and regulations. I want to suggest to you that there was certainty in rules and regulations, with just a basis in common sense. Less time, less money to have to comply with government if it wasn't going to make us any more healthy, wasn't going to make us any safer. And then lastly, and something I'm very proud of, is the ACLU last December came out with a report card on all the presidential candidates. Now the ACLU, a group dedicated to civil liberties, a group dedicated to the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, a group dedicated to the Constitution. They came out with a report card on all the presidential candidates. 24 Liberty torches was a perfect score. This is important. Mitt Romney and Rick Santorum had 0 Liberty torches out of 24. 0! And this is a guy vying to become President of the United States. Newt Gingrich had 4 Liberty torches out of 24. Wow. President Obama had 16 Liberty torches out of 24. Ron Paul, my hero, 18 Liberty torches out of 24. But Gary Johnson had 21 Liberty torches out of 24. It is important. The vast majority term tolerant. I use the term accepting because really, do any of us care the lives that